Welcome to CultureAlley Spanish. Hola, this is Español Lesson 9. Let's revise the forms of verbs ending in AR, ER, and IR together one more time. With yo or I, verbs ending in AR, ER, and IR all take up the ending O. With nosotros or we, AR changes to amos, ER to hemos, and IR to imos. Informally, with to, verbs ending in AR are changed to AS, and ER and IR endings are both changed to ES. In its plural form, or with vosotros, the endings for AR, ER, and IR ending verbs are ais, ace, and is, respectively. Formally, with usted, the ending ER transforms to A, and the endings ER and IR both change to E. With ustedes, we use AN for verbs ending in AR and EN for verbs ending in ER and IR. Exactly similar to the last two forms with él or ella, we use the ending A and E, and with ellos or ellas, we use AN and EN. Let's look at the examples again. Let's look at the forms of caminar first. To walk or caminar ends in AR, and its forms are yo camino, nosotros caminamos, tú caminas, vosotros camináis, usted camina, ustedes caminan, él or ella camina, ellos or ellas caminan. Next, we look at the forms of to eat or comer, which ends in ER. Yo como, nosotros comemos, tú comes, vosotros coméis, usted come, ustedes comen, él or ella come, ellos or ellas comen. Finally, let's look at the forms of to live or vivir, which ends in IR. Yo vivo, nosotros vivimos, tú vives, vosotros vivís, usted vive, ustedes viven, él or ella vive, ellos or ellas viven. Today we look at more conversations to help us cross the language barrier. In the last lesson, we learned how verbs change their forms depending on the subject or pronoun in the sentence. Today, we will use these verbs in conversations to help you get over language difficulties in a new place. Today's vocabulary. To understand is entender. Can you try that, please? Entender. To spell translates to deletrear. To read becomes leer. Can you try that, please? Leer. To speak is hablar. To say becomes decir. Try saying that again. Decir. To be able to is poder. To repeat becomes repetir. And lastly, to write translates to escribir. Try escribir. Escribir. Very good. Do you remember that some verbs undergo a small spelling change? For example, the middle E changes to I or IE, or the O changes to UE when you change their form depending on the subject. For example, to repeat is repetir. But I repeat becomes yo repito. Remember this as it will help you through the lessons. Great! So, let's start with a basic sentence. I don't understand. Looking at it word by word, I translates to yo. Don't or negation is no. And understand is entender. Remember that we can't use entender directly as verbs change form depending on the subject. Here, subject is I or yo. Hence, we change the form to entiendo. Hence, I don't understand becomes yo no entiendo. Can you try that, please? Yo no entiendo. Very good. Did you notice that we change entender to entiendo and not entendo? Entender changes its spelling. That is, the middle E changes to IE when we change its form depending on the subject. Hence, while to understand is entender, I understand becomes entiendo. So once again, I don't understand is no entiendo, where entiendo means I understand. So remember, to understand is entender, and I understand is translated as entiendo. One more time. Entiendo. Note that the spelling changes from E to IE. Similarly, she understands will be ella entiende. And formally, you understand becomes usted entiende. The exception to the last rule of spelling change is nosotros and vosotros. Verbs do not change spellings with nosotros and vosotros. They only change their form. Hence, we understand becomes nosotros entendemos and not nosotros entiendemos. Try saying we understand. Nosotros entendemos. Excellent. Similarly, you understand in an informal and plural context is vosotros entendéis and not vosotros entiendéis. So try saying you understand as if you were talking to multiple people in an informal situation. We say vosotros entendéis. Great. Now let's look at do you understand me? To translate this sentence, first let's translate do you understand? In an informal context, do you understand becomes ¿tú entiendes? Since we can omit the pronoun, do you understand can be translated as just ¿entiendes? Before learning how to say do you understand me, we need to learn the concept of indirect objects. A direct object is the noun or pronoun that the verb acts directly on, while an indirect object is the person affected by the action but not acted directly upon. Let's take an example. She gives them to me. Here, the direct object is them, and the indirect object is me. However, there are some verbs that use indirect object pronouns, even though those of us who speak English as a first language will probably think of them as using direct object pronouns. For example, in do you understand me? Me is used as the indirect object. Hence, do you understand me is translated as ¿me entiendes? Try that one more time. ¿Me entiendes? Very good. Please remember that the form of entender in translation is dependent on the subject or doer in the sentence. In do you understand me, you is the doer subject of the sentence. Hence, entender changes to entiendes. So as we saw, the translation for me when used as an indirect object is me in Spanish as well. Let's now look at the other object pronouns. When used as an indirect object, me translates to me. Informally, you becomes te. One more time. Te. Him, her, it, and the formal form of you are translated as le and se. Moving on, us is translated as nos. Can you say that? Nos. Informally, the plural form of you, plural, becomes os. Try that, please. Os. And finally, them and the formal and plural form of you are translated as les. Let's say that again. Less. Similar to do you understand me, I don't understand him is translated as no le entiendo, where le is an indirect object pronoun. You can say no te entiendo in an informal situation, and no le entiendo for a formal situation to communicate I don't understand you. So try these forms. No te entiendo informally and no le entiendo formally. Excellent. All right, it's quiz time. How will you say I understand you assuming an informal context? Will you say te entiendes or te entiendo? I understand you is te entiendo. Did you get that right? Did you understand why I understand you translated as te entiendo? This is because I is the doer or the subject here. Hence, I understand is entiendo, and I understand you becomes te entiendo. Great! Let's now look at how we will ask someone how something is said in Spanish. It is common to use indirect object pronouns when using verbs of communication. Examples include hablar or to speak and decir or to say or tell. Let's look at an example. In how do you say dash in Spanish, how is como. You used as an indirect object is se. Se is decir, but we can't use it as it is, as we will se. In translates to en, and finally, Spanish is español. Good. Looking at the correct usage for decir, do you remember that while to say is decir, you say in a formal context translates to dice, where the middle letter changes from E to I. So now our word-by-word translation becomes como, se, dice, dash, en español. Taking an example of the word eat, our sentence, how do you say eat in Spanish, translates to como se dice eat en español. Can you try that? Como se dice eat en español. Now let's try and ask, how do you write something in Spanish? And assume a formal situation. Word by word, we get how as como, you as se because we use indirect objects, and finally write as escribir. But remember, we cannot use escribir as is. Do you remember that to write is escribir, but formally you write becomes escribe. So now you know, how do you write translates as como se escribe. Try that again. Como se escribe. Como se escribe is used assuming you is in formal form, or as usted. Let's now see if you were to ask the same to someone you will refer to as tú. Informally, how do you write translates to como te escribes. Can you try that, please? Como te escribes. Great. Now let's learn to say, can you speak slowly? In Spanish, there is a verb that communicates ability. To be able to translates as poder. Try that, please. Poder. Good. So, when we ask, can you, we are in essence asking, are you able to? In such cases, can translates to poder. So looking at our sentence word by word, can becomes poder. You becomes tú. Speak becomes hablar. And slowly is despacio. Try saying that. Despacio. Good. But we cannot use poder as it is. Can or to be able to is poder, and it changes its spelling. The middle O changes to UE. Therefore, you can becomes tú puedes. Try that. Tú puedes, or you can. Tú can be omitted as it is understood. Hence, our word-by-word translation becomes can as puedes, speak as hablar, and slowly as despacio. As we saw, tú can be omitted. Since we have already changed the form of the first verb, which is can, remember that poder changed to puedes to reflect that we are talking about second person or you. Therefore, we don't change the form of hablar. So now you know, can you speak slowly? Translates as ¿Puedes hablar despacio? Say that one more time, please. ¿Puedes hablar despacio? Excellent. All right, it's quiz time again. How will you say, can you read, assuming an informal context? Will you say, ¿puedes leer? Or ¿puedes leer? Or ¿puedo leer? Can you read is ¿puedes leer? How did you do there? Try translating do you understand Spanish and assume you as tú. Is it entender español or entiendes español? It is entiendes español. Did you get that right? One more time. ¿Entiendes español? Or do you understand Spanish? All right, it's time for our Culture Leaf of the Day. Today, we look at New Year's Eve celebrations in Mexico. Mexicans celebrate the New Year's Eve by eating grapes and making wishes. At midnight, as the clock sounds 12 chimes, they eat a grape and make a wish, with every chime. Families decorate their homes in different colors to bring them good luck the next year. Red signifies improvement of lifestyle. Yellow means improved employment. Green is for improved finances, and white for improved health. Mexican sweetbread is baked with a coin hidden in the dough. The recipient of the slice with the coin is said to be blessed with good luck. Another tradition is to make a list of all the bad events over the past 12 months. Before midnight, this list is thrown into a fire, symbolizing the removal of negative energy from the new year. In the next lesson, we will learn some irregular verbs that will help us with conversations around asking and giving introductions. We hope you enjoyed your lesson today. See you at the alley for the next one.